Shalom. Shalom. First, I want to give all praises to Yahweh. Ba'ashem Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles, elders of great millstone, that rule well, that taught us truth, and blessings to the elect of the nation of Israel. Brother Ezekiel, I'll come with a very quick lesson. Lord willing, the lesson will be edifying. This lesson is on World War III because it's prophecy, but things basically simmered down a little bit. But then the other day, there were strikes on a so-called American Apache, which people believe was a false flag, because remember, Israel really controls America, you know, and that's in line with biblical prophecy, because they're the Amalekites, they're the head tribe of the nation of Edom. Okay, so they're in their right spirit. All right, but I want to show you this, because this is showing you that they're preparing for this farewell war. Many of these, I wouldn't call them the elites, I would call them the underlings. All right, and it goes down to, and we're gonna get into Ezekiel 33 a little bit, because when Ezekiel 38 mentions the nations that are gonna go to war and invade Israel. All right, it talks about Russia, Iran, and stuff like that, but it also speaks, and it says many others will be with them. All right, so it's not just going to be what's it called, Israel. It's not just going to be Russia with Iran, Libya, and so forth, Turkey, but there's going to be others with them, and you can see that. And I looked up some clips about this subject. All right, now we're going to go to Amos quickly. Okay, and Amos chapter 9, I'm going to start from verse 2, all right, to 3. And if you look at the subheading, it says the Most High's judgment unavoidable, but the elites, they're going to try and avoid, and they are, and there's evidence. That's why I'm doing this lesson, that they're trying to avoid that judgment. They know what's happening. They know what's going on, you know? So this is Amos 9 and 2. Though they dig into hell, all right, underground, all right, thence shall my hand take them. And that's going to be the hand of the elect, all right? Wherever the elites are hiding, all right, the elect, they're going to have spiritual powers going to get them. And get them out of these places. So if they're underground, digging into hell, all right, thence my hand shall take them, because the elect is going to get spiritual powers, and that is from the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Shem Yahushai. We can't do it off our own strength. Lord willing, off that number, we can't do it off our own strength. He's going to have to raise the standard, like it says, you know, in Isaiah. Okay, and though they climb up to heaven in their space stations and so forth, thence will I bring them down. Okay. So there's going to be no hiding. They're going to hide, but it's going to be futile. Okay? They're not going to escape their judgment. Verse 3, and though they hide themselves in the top of Carmel, all right, and if you know about Mount Carmel, that was an area in northern Israel, which is around the area today, which they call Haifa, which is, by the way, is getting bombed by the Iranians. All right? I will search them out thence, and though they be hid from my sight in the bottom of the sea. So they've got, you know, they're building an infrastructure of escape when it comes to World War III, but it's futile. Okay, so though they hid in the bottom of the sea, and thence will I command the serpent, and he shall bite them. And who's that serpent? Leviathan. All right, which they call, let's see, they call him Godzilla. All right, okay, because the oceans, the seas are so deep. All right, they weren't what's the word? They weren't creative when they made these films. They get it all from the Bible, man, and he actually exists. You know, brothers I've done about a couple of videos since I've been in the truth about Leviathan. And you can actually, there was one time during the pandemic where he actually made an appearance over there in California. And it was terrifying. The people were terrified, man. Okay. Alright, so you can, let me try and find it. You could try and see it for yourself, but there's many, there's many brothers, alright, that have done videos on it, on Leviathan, man, and he actually exists. Alright, so when you go to Job 41, see, they have all these different videos, but really, the one that you call, see, look, what was Leviathan, Job 41? That's where you can read about it. All right, Leviathan is Godzilla, and he exists, man. All right, he exists. Okay, so they can try and go down to the bottom of the sea, but the Lord is going to command the serpent, and it's going to bite them. So there's going to be no escape. All right, as it says in the top here, the Most High's judgment unavoidable. But as you can gonna watch from this video, they're trying to avoid it. All right, let me play this clip.
Decided to buy a nuclear bunker in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea because they know something's coming. They don't only know it's coming, they're making it happen. That's the thing. They're not sitting in the dark. They know that all of this tension eventually boils over.
Yeah, John, this is breaking news. The Iranian regime has launched a large missile attack at Israel. There are currently missiles in the skies of this country. We just saw one soaring toward the northern city of Haifa from our position here in Tel Aviv. The Iranians say they are responding because of the Israeli strikes that took place earlier today against the Lebanese capital of Beirut, specifically in the Dakhya neighborhood. And that followed Hezbollah strikes on northern Israel.
It's developing now ballistic missiles that are intercontinental ballistic missiles for 8,000-kilometer range. What does that mean? They add another 3,000 kilometers, and they've got under their atomic guns, New York City in target, Washington, Boston, Miami, Mar-a-Lago. Okay? So that is a very great danger. You don't want to be under the nuclear gun of these people who are not necessarily rational and who chant death to America.
But all these elements right now are giving an indication that there is a very complicated situation in the region. Whether this is going to evolve into an Iranian-Israeli war, this is a big question, including Lebanon, because the war in Lebanon hasn't come to an end. Or will this escalation lead to a mega, or let me say a grand deal on the region? This is also something that could be taken into consideration.
Yeah, and obviously this is still very much early days, early hours, all of this happening, or us getting word of it at least in the last hour, hour and a half.
Take a look here. Let's let Ivanka finish up.
Swam to the islands. We went on a hike, barefoot all the way up to the top, and we were just captivated. And it stayed with us ever since. And over the course of many years, we developed the opportunity to help realize its potential and transform it, but with a lot of restraint and care, because the land is so beautiful that really...
By the way, stop it for a minute. We know what she's saying. We get it. They're buying... Rich people are just buying islands, and we're doing it with care. We're doing it with so much care because they're here's what, folks, this is what that means. They're getting out. If they can't get on a spaceship off the country, they're going to the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. Inside Cezanne Island, the Albanian ex-military base that Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner want to turn into a luxury resort. The other thing is they're probably not building a luxury resort. They're going to build something that looks like a luxury resort and then live in it when there's a nuclear war. And that's what it is. They want you to root for them. They want you to be excited for them and happy for them. because they made it out. Rich people are probably not going to be able to get off the planet before it inevitably emoliates. But they are going to flee to the middle of the ocean if they can.
See, so there you go. There's proof that there's proof that what is said in Amos is exactly what they're doing. They're building deserted islands, underground bunkers. You know, they have I think it's in Colorado. You know, they've got this big mountain. You know, and only the top officials can go there. All right, so this is their way of they know World War III is coming because they're inducing it. Okay, that's why Iran fired at Israel, because America said, "Oh yeah, they downed an Apache helicopter, this, that, and the other." They've been doing so many false flags to try and provoke the Iranians. They want a war now, but it's the war is the Third World War. It has to come, all right, but it ain't gonna come now, okay? But you need to build up to it. You have to have the prophecy of Jacob's trouble first. You have to have what's it called, the MOTB being established, all right? The mark of the beast, okay, which we always do lessons on, all right? And then we're gonna have this Third World War, okay? Those things have to come to pass first. All right, now if you go to Ezekiel 38, it tells you, and look at the subheading here, it says prophecy about Gog and the future invasion of Israel. Okay, that's why that area, the so-called Middle East, is on fire right now. And the main people that are doing all the wickedness is Israel. Okay, all right, they're the ones that are really trying to induce this war. All right, because they have their own lunatic doctrine of bringing in this so-called New World Order. All right, so Ezekiel 38:1, it says, "And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog," which is Russia, "chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and prophesy against it." All right, verse 3, "And say, Thus saith the Lord God, I am against thee, O God, chief prince of Meshach and Tubal." And that area of Meshach and Tubal is that area around in Turkey. Same, and you're going to see also, when you go down, it's going to say Gomer as well. All right, because Turkey is a vast land, and they're going to be involved in this war. I'm going to show you proof that there's tensions between Israel and Turkey. All right, okay. Verse 4, "And I will turn thee back." It's talking about Russia, all right? I'm going to turn you back into the way they were when it had the, the Soviet Union, the communists, so forth. "And I'll put hooks in thy jaws, and bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen." All right? And in this period of time, do we have men on horses going into battle? No, we have men in tanks and so forth. Armored cars, armored vehicles, helicopters. Okay, so the modern day weaponry, all right, you're gonna have army using those weaponry just like they have with this whole Israel and Iran conflict, and all of them cloaked in sorts of armor, even a great company of bucklers and shields, and all handling swords, like your modern day swords, gun, missile, aircraft carriers, all these things. All right, verse 5, Persia is who? Iran. Ethiopia, all right, Ethiopia, which has been having their own war recently. All right, and who supplies Ethiopia with their weapons? Turkey does. All right, and Libya, which is in North Africa, and all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer, which is Turkey, and all his bands, the house of Togarmah and the North Quarters, and all his bands, and many, and this is the main point here, all right, and many people with thee, all right, many people with thee, okay. It's not just gonna be Iran, Turkey, Libya, Russia. They're gonna have other nations and other people with them because they have something called alliances, okay? And I'm going to show you a couple of them in this, what's it called, in these clips coming up. Verse 7, be thou prepared, and prepare thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. And that's what Russia has been doing. All right, with the Iran war, they've been giving what's it called, Iran weaponry, you know, intelligence. Same with the Chinese as well. All right. So when it says here, it talks about all the bands, which is armies, and many people with thee. All right. We're going to see other nations be allied with them. All right, because they've had enough. All right, of what the West and Israel has been doing, man. Okay. Now, this has recently happened. Now, I remember there was a recent, what's it, Naftali Bennett, one of the, I mean, he's a different party, but he's basically with, you know, the Zionists in Israel, and he said that the new threat is Erdogan and Turkey. They're the new Iran, which is absolutely ridiculous, you know? It's really ridiculous, but hey, let's listen to what it says here. This is on I-24, which is Israeli news. All right, let me see. Let's play this.
Is growing after Turkish President Erdogan said Israel's attacks on Syria and Lebanon have reached a point where they threaten Turkey as well, and Israel's aggression must be stopped. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu shot back, saying the anti-Semitic dictator Erdogan, who commits genocide against the Kurds, supports the terrorist organization Hamas, oppresses his own people, and imprisons political opponents, is the last one who can preach morality to the state of Israel. To give us more insight, we're joined now by Dr. Sinan Jidi, Senior Fellow on Turkey at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Sinan, what does Erdogan mean when he says strikes in Syria and Lebanon are threatening Turkey as well? And is this a threat that Erdogan is actually preparing to counter?
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much rhetoric you can sort of extol and dish out before it becomes policy, or that, you know, rhetoric frames perceptions and then fuels action. Bottom line is, look, we've heard Erdogan say, you know, words like this and utter words like this on an ongoing basis, especially since October 7. And I think what's coming out of his mouth now is based on this recent Saudi and Turkish agreement to rebuild the Hijaz Railway, which will cross through territories of Jordan as well as Syria. And I think that's an issue for him, because he's essentially trying to say, you know, that Turkey will essentially make its footprint in areas that are sensitive to Israeli security.
So what does this feud, big picture, between Israel and Turkey mean for U.S. President Donald Trump? He holds good.
Now, the interesting thing about that, remember, Turkey's a part of NATO. So this makes everything interesting. They're a part of NATO now. They're part of NATO now, but it's not looking good. You know? He's been saying, for example, he proposed, I think, that Turkish troops should go in to enter the Gaza Strip. Listen to what the ambassador of Israel said about this.
Why we are against the participation of Turkey in Gaza. So I would say that countries that once are ready to send armed forces should be at least fair to Israel. They shouldn't be so supportive maybe, but they shouldn't be hostile to Israel. But unfortunately, and mainly during the last 2 years, but even before that, Turkey led by Erdogan, led hostile approach against Israel, included not only hostile statements, but also diplomatic and economic measures against.
And that's how it starts. That's how World War II started, when Hitler was talking about what the Poles were doing, because the way World War II started was that Germans were living in Poland because Germany was parts of their territory after World War One was given, all right, to France. That's why you have Strasbourg in France. The Sudetenland was given to the Czechs, and the area of Danzig, Lawich, all that area was given to the Poles. And then basically the Poles, there was propaganda against Germans, and they started to kill Germans in mass. And that's when Hitler was saying, listen, this cannot continue. You know, it was words after a while, all right? But then when something happened called the Danzig massacres, you can look it up for yourself, he invaded Poland. And France and Britain had a pact with Poland to say, if the Germans invade you, we'll declare war against Germany. And they said they'll help the Poles defend themselves. But you guess what they did? They did declare war against Germany, but they never helped the Poles whatsoever. 1 month and the Germans completely flattered them. And that's the one of the reasons why this World War III, again, because it's Bible prophecy, is going to happen, because the West say one thing and they do another. And people are tired of it. Okay? People are tired of it. Now, there's other nations that are going to be allied with them, and one of them is North Korea. Kim Jong-un's sister, who is high in that government, you know, has had hard words to say about America, because America is allies with South Korea, and they've recently been doing drills, which is on their doorstep.
As the war in West Asia rages on, North Korea is keeping the tensions alive in the Korean peninsula. Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, has issued a strong warning to the United States and its allies. Ahead of the joint annual war games between South Korea and the US, the North Korean leader's sister warned of terrible consequences should the planned drills go ahead. Well, the warning comes after Seoul and Washington began their spring military drills, called Freedom Shield, on Monday. The exercise involves around 18,000 South Korean troops and is scheduled to run until March 19th. Pyongyang has long criticized these joint military drills, which it describes as rehearsals for an invasion. Kim Yo-jong, the sister and close confidant of leader Kim Jong-un, was recently promoted to head the ruling Workers' Party General Affairs Department. Operating largely behind the scenes, she's been shaping North Korea's diplomatic and nuclear strategies. Following the promotion, she has now stepped forward with a fresh warning.
At this grave moment, when the global security landscape is rapidly collapsing and conflicts are erupting across the world, U.S. and South Korea military exercises being forcefully carried out in South Korea will only further destroy regional stability. The military display conducted near and around the sphere of our national sovereignty and security could lead to consequences too dreadful to imagine. They must never attempt to test our patience, our resolve, or our capabilities.
Well, Washington and Seoul insist the joint military exercise is purely defensive in nature. The drills are said to include deterrence scenarios linked to North Korea's nuclear weapons program. However, Kim Yo-jong rejected that justification, stating that there was no excuse for such drills. The drills also faced criticism from within South Korea, as anti-war protesters gathered outside the United States Embassy in Seoul.
See, so this is recently, this is only, hang on, let's see. This is what, 3 months ago. Okay? So you can see when it says many others with them, when this Third World War happens, what, you think North Korea is going to just turn around and say, yeah, we're going to bury the hatchet with America, and we're going to be allies with them? No, they're not. They're going to be allies with Russia. They're already allies with Russia, you know? And who else are they allies with? China. So you can add them to that. Okay? So this World War is going to be, as it says, hang on, let me get that. Okay? It says that says it in Isaiah 9. All right? It's going to be a different war. All right? Isaiah 9:5. For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise and garments rolled in blood. So back in the ancient world, you used to go on the battlefield. You know, you have horsemen, armor. You know, just like we have in that period that you call the Middle Ages, which is a period that I love. For example, all right, if you yeah, back in that time, you have people with armor. All right, you know, and this was our history, you know, because we were forever having wars, man. All right, even though these Edomites, they think that this is their history, but it's ours. But they used to go on the battlefield, you know, garments rolled in blood. Okay, this is what Isaiah 9:5 is talking about. For every battle of the warrior is a confused noise, charge. You know, you're screaming, you're shouting, and garments rolled in blood. You thrust your sword into your enemy, and they'll die. All right, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire. All right, and what's that talking about? It's going to be more or less. Yes, it's going to have, you know, armies and jets and bombs, but it's going to be a nuclear war, because just like you saw the clip here, all right, the North Koreans, when this war happens, they'll definitely be allied with Russia. All right. Okay. That's why it says Gomer and Ezekiel 38:6. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. All right. You're gonna have other people, other nations are gonna come together with Russia, all right, with Iran and so forth. And you could put China in that. You really believe that China is gonna be allied, all right, and be on the side of America with the relations? See, that's why the Bible says to watch as well as pray. You can see that this is all coming, all right. Now I want to hear what this is an interesting clip about what Erdogan said, because one of the participants in this Third World War, all right, was Gomer, all right, and that's Turkey. Now Turkey has a big landmass, all right. Let's see, Ezekiel. Let me see if I can find it. I've got this map. Oh, it's a map here. There you go. All right. There you go, look. See, so Gomer here, all right, this is the landmass of Turkey. That's why it says Togarmah, all right? That's a region in modern-day Turkey, all right? So, you see it says Gomer, again, that eligible landmass is in Turkey, because Turkey is a huge nation, you know? And if you look at the top of the scripture, it says the invasion of Israel, all right? So this is where this Third World War is going to be, all right? So Turkey's going to be heavily involved. And by the way, they've got I think the second biggest army in NATO, okay? So they're a major player. Let me just play this, all right?
President Erdogan is crying foul once again, saying that Israel's attacks on Syria and Lebanon have reached a point where they pose a threat to Turkey and the whole world. Speaking to his own parliament, he said, quote, "Nobody should chase adventures there, and it must be stopped." Here is Erdogan in his own words.
Attacks by Netanyahu and his murder network on Syria and Lebanon have reached a point where they threaten Turkey as much as these two brotherly countries. We will not turn a blind eye to any attack against our brothers. Now these people and their triggermen are going around making so-called threats targeting Turkey. There is no need for you to say this. We already know your intention, your purpose, and your target very well. We see very clearly what you are pursuing. We are fully aware of what the ultimate goal of the delusion of the Promised Land is. God willing, we will never allow this.
And we're back.
You hear what he said? Delusion of the Promised Land. Why is he talking about? He's talking about the Greater Israel Project. All right? The Greater Israel Project. There you go. Which they want to expand their borders. You know? They want to expand their borders. This is exactly what they want. This is the reason why they're causing so much havoc. Alright? And they've said it. And it's not even on their flag. Their flag has 2 rivers from the Nile to the Euphrates. That's what they want. And that's what Erdogan was saying. Erdogan was saying that, look, you know, your dream of expanding, you know, the borders of the Promised Land is not going to happen. Alright? And so you can see that this is all coming to pass, man. It's all about prophecy, but it was an article I had here, which is not going to be popular with the Amalekites and the Turks, but they're related, you know. They're not taught that, but they're related. They're the same people. Alright? They're the same people. It's only some of them branched into Islam, alright, in the Middle Ages when Israelites were ruling Europe, and then the others, under a leader of his name Kagan Bullen, he came up with this thing called Judaism. Alright, but they're the same people. Alright, and this article goes into it. Science reveals Jewish roots, forgotten Turkish roots. Alright, Israeli-born geneticist believes Turkish villages of Ashkenaz and Ashananaz were part of the original homeland for Ashkenazi Jews. See? So they're related, but they don't get on because one of them is into Islam, the other of them are into Judaism. Okay? So we have to watch this very carefully because that's why it says many others are going to be with them. Alright? And that includes North Korea, China. Yeah, who else? Oh, even the Sahel countries. Alright? Like Mali, Niger, is it not yet? Niger and Burkina Faso. Because these countries are more or less Israelite countries. See? Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are adjoining landlocked countries in West Africa, Sahel region, ruled by military juntas because they kicked out, you know, the French and you know, all the former colonies, and now, okay, they're getting support from who? From Russia. Okay? So many others with them. It could be that when this war breaks out, that soldiers from these countries, and a lot of these countries are Israelites, man. A lot of the people from Niger, Israelites, Burkina Faso, and Mali as well, man. And these countries are allied with Russia. That's where they get their weapons from, and so forth. So they might be with them in this farewell war as well. Okay? So we just got to keep our eyes on it. You know what I mean? You know? Like Ezekiel 38 and 37, it says, be prepared, be thou prepared, and prepare thyself. Prepare for thyself and all thy company, alright, that are assembled with thee. So you're going to have people like North Korea. You might have the Sahel countries. Already in Ukraine, Russia has Jake soldiers fighting in Ukraine. All right? And be thou a guard unto them. All right? And the biggest country out of all of them is Russia, and that's what Russia is doing. Okay? So we have to watch this very closely, you know? But this is not coming out of the blue, because Erdogan's been saying these things for a long time. But we have to wait and see whether it will turn into action, because it will happen, because it's in Ezekiel 38. Okay? Yeah, so keep watching and keep praying like the Bible says now. Alright, I pray you're edified to the next lesson. Shalom.